All right, good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. I think we're back with most of the same folks from our last meeting. We're going to start off with, I'll introduce myself first. Jonathan Teresi, Director of Strategic Planning in the Planning and Evaluation Office. And I'm here with my colleague, Robert Ruiz.
Hello.
Principal Planner in the Planning and Evaluation Office. And we're excited to be back with you this week and for our second meeting. We're going to start just with the roll call, make sure everyone's properly placed, and if we need to help navigate folks to any other rooms, we can. I see Terry, and I apologize if I say your name wrong. G-H-I? I do not see that person logged in. All right, so we'll just hold up there. Michelle, hi Michelle. Chris, are you with us? I don't see Chris either. Sergio? Do not see Sergio. Polly? No Polly. Rosa? I see Rosa. Hi, and Heather Jones? I see Heather. And Jim, are you here as an observer? Let me see if
yes, I'm an observer. I'm not a member of the PFRC.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jim. And I see another SE on hold. So that is Sergio. Okay, Sergio, I wonder if he's needs help getting crossed over, but it looks like he's on hold here. Great. All right. So we have 4 questions. I'm going to project them, and we'll use a similar format as last time, where people can raise their virtual hand and give feedback. What I'd like to do in each question is I want to give everyone a chance to share their feedback before we go back for a second kind of round. So we'll have about 15 minutes per question, a little less for the last one because it's only one part. And so as we go through, we'll go do kind of a loop through all the members for feedback. And then if we have time for a second comment, we'll do that as well. But just raise your virtual hand and I'll just call them as we see them come up. Any questions about the format or structure we're going to use tonight? Okay, let's jump into it. Okay, so the first actually, you know what, Robert? Did I think we had you project last time, correct?
So if you want to have the conversation, I'll be taking notes as everyone has conversation around each question, and then at the last 10 minutes of our time, I'll project what I've been drafting, and then we can also, as a group, make decisions as to what we'll share in the share out with the larger group.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, so the first question, and what I will do here is actually, I'm going to need to, just so I can see the hands, stop projecting. First question is, the revised site concept proposes an area between the existing ACC and new ACC field that would both support bus service operations during the school day and resemble a public plaza at all other times. What features of this proposal do you like the best? That's the first part. Again, I'll just look for hands to get us kind of started. Rosa?
Can you just reread the question? I'm better at kind of reading it myself, but if you're going to read them, then it'd be good to just maybe read it twice in a row.
Okay, sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
sorry, thank you.
Yep. The revised site concept proposes an area between the existing ACC and new ACC and new field that would both support bus service operations during the school day and resemble a public plaza at all other times. What features of this proposal do you like the best? Rosa, go ahead.
Sure. So I can go for, I guess I like the kind of efficient use of the site related to that proposal. I don't necessarily know what I think about how that will be implemented, but I guess assuming that it's implemented well, then that seems good. I mean,
Rosa, would you mind repeating? There was some interruption on the call.
Sure. I said I like the efficient use of the site in that manner, having kind of a public pedestrian plaza when the buses aren't being used or aren't coming through. I just don't know the logistics of it and how it happens, you know, so do you block off traffic with bollards? How do you maintain the pedestrian area? Positive feedback.
Yeah, if everyone could just mute the
And then, so basically, I don't know how it happens. I mean, I like the efficient use. I think with the number of buses that maybe are coming in during the day so many times to drop off people at the career center, then even though it's not a lot of buses, it seems like you're going to be kind of, it's pedestrian and then now it's not. It's pedestrian and now it's not. So I just don't know how it kind of really works. But I do like the efficient use of the site.
Any other comments for this question?
Rosa, are you projecting something? Can anybody see it?
I am not. No,
Oh.
I'm not projecting anything. I think Jonathan was gonna project the questions, but then he
Can't see the hands raised.
they
Yeah.
can't see the hands raised. So
Here, this is Robert. I'll project what I'm typing. So, and it'll show the question.
Hey, Jonathan, this is Sergio. Can I ask you a very novice question here?
Sure.
I'm just joining for the first time in several meetings. So is there, do you know what slide we're talking about in terms of rendering so I could have a better sense of what we're talking about for the plaza and what that looks like?
Yeah, on the discussion guide, Robert, if you wouldn't mind just scrolling up. I don't recall the exact slide, but on the discussion guide that Robert's projecting. Okay, yeah, that.
On the Engage website, this is from the Engage website for the BLPC. So I believe,
okay.
Let me see.
Line
Yep,
number fucking 20. I was looking at slide 24.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. I just wanted to have a little bit of more of a perspective in terms of what we're looking at.
Okay, Michelle, go ahead.
Thanks. It's kind of, I still don't have a really good understanding of what it will look like from the drawings, and that might be my limit. That's probably my limitation. But I do like that the main entry and the entrance was moved over to that side, and so I'm not sure that's totally answering the question. But I like the flow for the buses coming through that way, and I like that that's where the main entrance is going to be. It makes a lot more practical sense in terms of how flow is going to move. And then right now we have a lot of people walking around in that area already. So, I mean, I think that making or still acknowledging that there's going to be a lot of people walking in that area is good. I just, to what Rosa said, I'm not sure how you manage the buses and the people at different times.
Thank you. Terry, go ahead.
Yes. I had several questions about this. One on that slide number 20. They do show all buses going out and nothing in entry, which I thought was bizarre. I also am concerned that the pedestrian path through the plaza seems to be the same as the bus path. I'm not sure where the pedestrians go when the people are getting on and off buses and buses are there. I also was wondering about, here, I'll get back to this in the next question. Never mind.
Any other questions for this first part? Sergio, go ahead.
I think other people had. Michelle, did you have your hand before me? I don't want to skip ahead of the line if anyone else was waiting.
Oh, we're gonna go through Sergio, everyone who makes their
Okay.
comment first, then we'll circle back to people who already spoke.
That sounds great, Jonathan. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the rendering here, and can you talk to me a little bit more about how is this defined as a plaza? It looks like just a driveway with a different kind of instead of asphalt, it looks like it's a different kind of material that it's made. I don't know what makes it a plaza just because pedestrians could walk on it. Am I understanding that correctly? When the buses are not being used in that area?
Jonathan, you're on mute.
If Robert, if you would, on the discussion guide, if you would scroll up to page 3.
So somebody must be projecting. So to whoever's projecting, I'll project over. So let me see this.
See, you get a little bit of I think, a sense of the plaza on, and just if you could zoom in, Robert, down one more slide. I'm sorry, page. On the bottom right-hand corner, if you could just zoom into those key features. Yeah, and then on the right-hand side, yeah, right in those two little side images there, that kind of shows you just a different view. If you could just zoom in a little bit more. That's our time for that question. Yeah, right there, then just to the right. You can see there the grass, the trees, landscaping, kind of the pedestrian. Over to the, all right, here, let me. It's still, I see where, the feedback people are saying in regards to the drawings, but I think these two help give a little bit of a sense for the that plaza kind of landscaping and the kind of pedestrian egresses and main entry into the building. Does that help at all? And we can certainly bring that feedback back as well, Sergio, for maybe some more clarity.
Yeah, that's helpful. But I also, then I would second what some folks had said about, the transition between when buses are able to use that area and pedestrians and what to do with that. And maybe more further down the line, I'll have more questions about markings and signs and so on to help that transition or make sure that both kinds of modes are, can coexist in that space.
Great. That's great feedback. Thank you. Heather.
I do think it's really positive to have an ingress and egress point from Walter Reed Drive. But I am concerned about what I see as sort of lack of parallel sidewalks to the plaza for the pedestrians to use when they're getting dropped off on the bus or during the arrival and dismissal times. So I too share confusion about the interaction between pedestrians, bicycles, and the buses. And particularly because I know the Career Center this site has more bus times than your average site because people are going back to neighborhood high schools throughout the day. So I just want to echo that I think those concerns are important.
Thank you for that. We have time for 2 more comments and we have to go on to part B. So I saw Terry's hand first and then we'll go to Rosa. Terry?
Very quick. I wasn't sure if buses are going to be double parked across the space so that it's no room for pedestrians.
Okay. Thank you. And Rosa?
Yeah, I'm kind of going twice, I guess, but the more I think about it and the more I reread that question, the whole idea of kind of keeping it bus only during a school day, so say Monday through Friday for that window, and then again, public plaza at all other times. I could see how you might block it off with bollards that pop up or something. and then it becomes more of a public area. I don't know that you have to spend extra money to make it this beautiful plaza, because I don't know that there's anything. It's not like a street with retail on either side that you're going to go, passing through and kind of strolling down. I do see that it could be used, like a lot of blacktop parking lots get used for little biking, kids biking, chalk drawing, and things like that during the weekend. So I definitely see it being used if it gets blocked off from vehicular traffic. But I don't think that there's any reason to go crazy with it, because it's not like, this urban city street that you're walking along.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to part B. And I think we started to get a little into this, but let's unpack this a little bit more. What other alternatives or suggestions do you have for that area of the site, including the curb cut along Walter Reed Drive, that may strengthen alignment with the principles of civic design? And again, I'll do it one more time. What other alternatives or suggestions do you have for that area of the site, including the curb cut along Walter Reed Drive, that may strengthen alignment with the principles of civic design? Terry, you can start us off if you'd like. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm not sure exactly how it goes with civic design, but I think the curb cut on Walter Reed will definitely facilitate buses going in and out and not having so much of an impact on Highland. And if part of our civic process is not to impact the neighborhood too much, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. Rosa?
Yeah, I think I don't have a comment on the curb cut itself, but I think there could be an opportunity to treat that entry like a gate onto the campus, where the massing of the new building kind of reflects the massing of the existing library on the other side, so that you're basically like entering through kind of these, similar sized massings on either side of the entry. But again, that would also kind of lead into whether, what the long-term plans are for the site, because there's no sense in making something like that if, for whatever reason, the library portion goes away.
Thank you. Heather, Michelle, or Sergio, would you like to add anything on? It's okay. We can move on if there's nothing further, but wanted to give a chance.
Yeah, thanks for checking in. I think I'm good with that question right now.
Okay. All right, let's transition on to number 2. And just a quick, Terry, I think it looks like you're logged in on 2 devices. That's why you might be getting some feedback, just as a technical thing. It's on our end, it's showing as 2 separate logins. But
Sorry, I don't know why that's happening. I lost all visuals and I checked back in, and I think somehow I must still have to be in twice. I apologize.
That's okay. Just wanted to see if okay, on-site parking. How appealing to you is expanding the parking footprint around the existing ACC building if it were to modify the shape and/or height of the above-grade parking garage? Again, I'll do it one more time. How appealing to you is expanding the parking footprint around the existing ACC building if it were to modify the shape and/or height of the above-grade parking garage? Rosa, go ahead.
Sure, I got a comment on everything. It is not appealing to me unless it is the only thing necessary to keep the project in budget. I I would prefer, based on what Jeff was saying, that when you enter mid-site, that the garage might be at the height of the existing ACC building. That seems great. So I would rather have green space on the opposite, you know, where the rest of that surface lot is kind of shown.
Thank you. Heather.
I think keeping the parking garage within the dotted line is really important for the neighbors of the site, and keeping that green space available there. I agree that budget considerations should always be kept in mind, but I do think that in order to support the neighborhood, we should try to keep the parking as much as possible on 9th Street.
Okay. Thank you. Michelle?
I'm going to echo some people here, but I would rather have the green space. And that was kind of my question, is the alternative is green space, correct? And the budget is the most important thing, but I would rather have the green space and the parking garage, the height that it's going to be.
Okay. Thank you. And then we'll go to Terry and then Sergio.
Well, here I come as an echo again. I apologize. I tried to change it, but it didn't work. I agree with everyone. And I think we also need that green space for the teen parenting program, for a small area for their children to play in. I think that was part of design originally, and I think we do have to have that for that program. I also am kind of curious about whether we are going to make sure this ties into the Career Center's auto mechanic program, and we are making space in this garage structure for them. And if that required we had to go one story higher, what would that cost, as opposed to going partly underground?
Thank you. Sergio?
Yeah, just a quick question. And sorry, I should know this, but I'm trying to catch up here. The garage itself is proposed. Does it right now go under the ground level? Does it go down at all? Is it just ground surface and up?
It's grade and up. It's not below grade.
Grade up and up.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would echo everyone else here. I think green space is important, and I would prefer to keep as much green space as possible around the space. I mean, an option, I know budget is also important, and there's a lot more factors, but if anything, I mean, expand down if possible, or you know, try to keep that as an option. But definitely in terms of green space, I would definitely prefer that green space to be kept.
Right. Okay, we do have a few more minutes to go back a second round if anyone has any additional comments. I do see some hands up, but I don't know if they were from before or if they're for second comments. So I'll just go. Michelle, did you have an additional comment?
No, but I one of your questions was about the cut for the driveway, and I'm just curious why that was a question, the cut for the driveway. I'm not even sure if anybody else wants to help me out. What would be the options and what would be the benefit cost of different options for cut for the driveway? I'm wondering if it's the width of the plan.
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with like short-term usage, you know, for people that were coming and you know, to not have to pull into the garage, that they could there might be some parking if you do a cutout there along the Walter Reed Drive to have some short-term parking available. That was my understanding. There might be more to it, but that was my understanding of part of the rationale for doing some of the cutout.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Terry, you want to add on to that question? The on-site parking? Okay, let's move on to part B for question 2. For each recent capital project, APS has relied on available and convenient on-street parking to support a limited portion of peak parking demand. What groups, APS staff, high school students, library staff, APS library visitors, should be prioritized for on-site parking? That's a big one. I'll read it again. For each recent capital project, APS has relied on available and convenient on-street parking to support a limited portion of peak parking demands. What groups should be prioritized for on-site parking? We'll start with Rosa, and then we'll go to Terry. Rosa?
Sure. I think full-time staff. So I think, well, I mean, and obviously, so teachers, APS staff, I guess, regardless of whether they're full-time, library staff, and then, then I would say any overflow would be for high school students. And I feel like if you do that, then you might have enough on-street parking for APS and library visitors. But basically, I think, I don't know. Whatever.
Okay. And that's in rank order, right, Rosa? That's you.
Yeah,
kind of
that's sort of what
okay.
I was doing. I feel like,
Okay.
I mean, I guess you could, it seems that if you try to have APS library visitor spots, kind of visitor spots tagged within the garage, you could do that. But I feel like if you find a spot on the street, you're probably going to snag one on the street.
Mm-hmm. Versus pulling in, yeah, if it's short term. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Terry, and then we'll go to Heather. Terry might be, our image is looking frozen on my end. We'll come back to Terry. Heather?
I agree, the full-time APS staff and library staff, I think for me, they're co-equal ones. As a parent who has to drop off at the Heights building sometimes, like if you're dropping off from a doctor's appointment or whatever, and the requirement to go in to sign in, I think it's really important to have spots for parents to be able to do that, and I would put them above students. Because finding neighborhood parking in some of these places is very challenging. So I would make them to have visitor spots for the school staff, for the schools, for parents to drop off. And it can be like 15-minute visitor parking, short term.
Great, thank you. Sergio?
Yes, thanks. I'm assuming we're discussing priority during school hours. Is that correct? That's what we're focusing on. Okay. Didn't want to point out the obvious, but I just wanted to make sure I was on the same page here. No, I agree with that. With the first bullet there, the ranking for me would be staff, school staff and teachers, and so then library staff, and then the overflow for high school students. I do like the idea about maybe assigning a few parkings for short-term spots. I've seen that at some other schools, and I think that's definitely helpful. Do you know if there is another situation, and maybe WNL, that may use something similar? Because I know, well, I guess the Ed Center is not there anymore, but is there any other school that may have something similar where we could see what's working or anything like that? Maybe we could benchmark and ask them to see what kind of feedback, as before they plan this out and when they implement it, to see if there's any changes, and maybe we could use some of what we learned from that to help us discuss some of these answers. That would be my only suggestion.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback, and we'll be sure to capture that as well. No, great.
The Heights has short-term parking in the front during the school day.
Do you know how many spaces that is? Just a few?
I mean, it probably works out to like 7, maybe.
Okay.
Robert, if you wouldn't mind, can you scroll up for a minute to, there were some preliminary estimates of like an allocation of spots. Let's see. Right there, yep.
Yeah, it's this one.
And if you wanted to zoom in. So this is kind of a preliminary assessment of like demand. So there, high school students in that kind of range. I think some of this too depends on, right, the uses of the overall site and what ends up becoming of the current ACC building and its use, and in terms of how these are allocated. But I think there's probably flexibility within the 400 spots or so. But this is what the preliminary kind of demand assessment was. Okay, we can go back. All right, we have a few minutes for any other additional comments before we move on to the next question. Sergio, was that a hand from before or an additional comment?
Oops, yeah, no, that was from before. Sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. All right, let's move on to the next question. So what aspects of the building and site concepts offer the most appeal to you? What aspects of the building and site concepts offer the most appeal to you? I think in these latest renderings, you got to see the massing and the height kind of progressing from 3 stories to 5. There were some other features. Robert, if you could just scroll up, we can kind of just re-jog some memories of that. I think that page 3 of 8 gives kind of a bird's eye view of the site. Have kind of the leveling, the terrace features, the plaza field there. So just overall, as you think about some of the concepts, what aspects of the building and site concepts offer the most appeal to you? And we'll start there. Heather.
So I have students at both Heights and Jefferson, and I have realized the value of protected terraces for the students during the pandemic, and I really advocate for those. They have allowed for easy outside eating. They've allowed for the schools to have outside social events that haven't been available to my students at Jefferson. And they create a safe space that's protected for kids to be outside during the day. So I really think that having terrace space for the students to use is really important.
Great. Thank you for that. Rosa?
Hold on, I'm gonna undo my hand, so. I guess I just the terrace. I do like the terraces, and I'll leave it at that. I like the stepping of the building, like the massing higher towards Columbia Pike and lower at 7th.
Sergio?
Yeah, I would just add for the terraces that I do like on the renderings that there's a little bit of green, either bushes or whatever kind of plants that we could take advantage in some of those spaces to add to. So I do like the renderings there to see if we could offer some of the natural concepts there in terms of maybe some plants or anything like that. So I do like the renderings of that.
Great. Michelle?
Oh, I'm not saying anything new. I like the terraces a lot, and I also like the stepped features of the building as it goes down. I'm looking at slide 26, kind of looking down Walter Reed or up Walter Reed, and the way that it steps, and that it's not a superfluous design. Like, we're still using these. It doesn't seem to be like adding money to the budget for the sake of design, but it's still, I think, attractive.
And I think I heard earlier too, just to make sure I correctly capture this, but people like the location of the entrance. I heard in earlier comments.
Yeah, I said that. I do like the entrance.
Yeah.
I did. The one that was in the middle, I think, would probably be a little bit more aesthetically appealing, but it's not going to be used as much as the one on the end.
Great. And the the other piece too, I think that was new, is option 2 for the bus, the routes. I know there were some questions getting a little bit more clarity about how this all interplays with pedestrians and bikes and cars, but having that from Walter Reed Drive, I think I recalled some feedback from the group that having that as another way into the campus was advisable, was preferable and liked. Does that reflect the consensus of many here in the group about the option 2 for the transportation?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we can put that, Robert, the option 2. People for option 2 on the transportation.
And that's us, the
Great.
building and site concept for A, 3A?
Yeah, the site concept. Yeah, I think 3A for the concept, site concept, the option 2 on the transportation. Okay, let's shift gears and think about the aspects of the building and site concepts that offered the least appeal. Good, Rosie, you can start us off.
Sure. So I would say I like the terraces, but I wonder if they should face towards the field, especially if they're going to be student use only. So I think maybe if you're doing some sun studies, you can determine what seems appropriate for shading during lunch, or if you think it should have more sun during lunch because they're going to be used during the school year more than the summer. But I think also the fact that they do face Walter Reed would be amazing if they were public and open during, say, the jazz festival that takes place right in that area. Then if people could sit on those and look down at the jazz festival, that would be great. But if they're just going to be for students and the building is closed during that other public time, then I think that would be unfortunate. Then I think maybe they should face the other way so that the students could watch, some activities occurring on the field instead of looking down at a boring street. And then I would like to have seen a rendering from, say, 7th. I know we've got the renderings of the building along Walter Reed, but I don't get one kind of all the way down Walter Reed to really understand the massing in relationship to the other buildings, both the residential side and the existing ACC and library. And so that, I feel like if I saw a longer rendering both up and down Walter Reed, I could have more comment on whether I like the stepping back, the kind of the zigzag. I think I like that, but I don't know what it really looks like because I don't have the context. And then I think I wrote something else down, but I don't see it. So yeah, okay, so I'm done.
Thanks. Heather?
I was concerned about the location of the service entrance and where the automotive program, how they get access to the building with the cars and how that conflicts with the service entrance. So I may be missing something, but it looks like that seems like a lot of activity going into that one small service area. So that's my concern.
Great. Thank you. Sergio and Michelle?
Thanks, Jonathan. One question I had is I just knowing that space now, it looks like we're going to, the diamond field that was attached closer to 7th Street is going to be gone. So I see in the rendering, just the athletic field there. It's depicting a soccer field. Do you know if that's going to be a multi-use field and what kind of material? I would just like to see maybe more options, given that the diamond field where youth baseball on the weekends is used through Parks and Rec. If that's just going to be a field that's taken away from them, and or more about that's proposed, I guess, field that's there, if it's going to be multi-use, and if so, what options for students to have. So anyways, that was my only comment that I would like to have more information about. And I do like the tree canopy. It looks like we've added a lot more trees to the space. Is that correct?
Yeah, there is. Yes, there is definitely some additions.
Okay. Yeah,
so it will not be a regulation size field. There's not space to accommodate a full-size regulation field.
Okay.
And I don't think there's been any final decisions on grass versus turf, but I think the trend has been more leaning towards turf because it does provide a little more flexibility on use and throughout different seasons and weather conditions.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And I think from my understanding from the county's DPR's perspective, I know turf usually equates to lights, but I know with the neighborhood and so on there, I'm not sure how receptive they'll be to that thought. So anyhow, I do agree with you in terms of turf being more longevity for the instead of just grass and the upkeep that grass takes into account. So okay, yeah, I would just like to know, I guess, more information about that, because it looks like the building closer to 7th Street is going to be taken away from that open space that's currently there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Heather?
I think also it's missing a secondary entrance on the side of the bus loop for the building. I think there's just a secondary entrance on Walter Reed, but you might want kids going in and out closer to where the buses are.
Yeah, I can speak from my time at Wakefield. We had 18 doors in, and I would say 4 or 5 of the doors got heavy use, in the morning and afternoon in terms of how kids got in and out of the building. So there's probably, I know the drawings don't show how many doors there would be, but based on fire code and others, there's probably going to be a variety of doors throughout the building, and but which are more defined as kind of ingress. That's a good question. Moving on to question 4, our last question. What, if any, principles of civic design do not seem to be reflected in the revised building and site concepts? How might such principles be made more apparent in the concept design? And maybe we can go up, Robert, to help everyone scroll up. I think we have the principles of civic design, at least an excerpt of them, I believe, on, it's not all of them. Maybe we can work on I'll see if I can find the full list, but we have an excerpt of them on page 1 to 2.
Let's see.
And these were, and these were the ones that were featured. So I guess as we look at those, the ones that Mr. Chambers featured, are any of those do not seem to be reflected in the revised concept? How might they be made more apparent in the concept design? So as we think about massing strategies, emphasizing pedestrian human scale to the building, ensuring that the building and site are functionally and spatially coherent, and can you scroll down to the next page, please, Robert? Okay, and a few more. Orientating the primary building entrance to the appropriate adjacent street. Take advantage of prominent sites and major civic programs to create bold architecture and creating positive outdoor spaces with pedestrian emphasis. So are there any of these that you don't see reflected? I know that to the right is the examples of how it's reflected, but is there any that might be made more apparent in the concept design as you think about those principles? And there are others as well. These are just the ones that were readily accessible to share. Heather?
Well, so I'm the one I was concerned about was principle number 6, which is optimizing the open space for relaxation and recreation and minimizing the footprint. It does seem like the footprint of the building has gotten much larger and taken away from the open space. And I know it's all part of the weighing of the different principles. And I know there are concerns about too much mass in places. I am not adjacent to that, but I know that the neighbors have been concerned about the lack of green space in the neighborhood. So it does feel like you're losing more green space with this design.
Okay, thank you. Rosa? Rosa, I think you're on mute still, maybe.
Thank you. So there's the create positive outdoor spaces with a pedestrian emphasis. I was saying, I don't know which number that is because I'm looking at the attachment A, which lists the principles of civic design from a previous meeting. But anyways, I feel like that pedestrian emphasis, again, I just feel like there should be, if there's a way to make some of that terrace area public, I think it would be nice. Maybe because of the sloping of the site, you could get the accessibility. Entrance, a portion of one of those terraces might be accessible to the public from the sidewalk. I just think it's a shame that, that also kind of hits the support joint development and use of the school and family facilities when in the best interest of both entities. So again, just trying to make those public, if a portion of them at least, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Terry?
Let's see if this works this time. I'm more concerned about the terraces being accessible to people with disabilities. And I think if you have raised terraces, that's not going to be publicly accessible to people who have some infirmities or some reason in which they needed that 3% grade or less to be able to get to them. I think having the terraces does allow the neighborhood to have a feeling of greenness, even if they cannot use them. And I think having green trees and space is always a really good idea.
Thank you. Any other comments? Rosa, good. We can build on.
Oops, I guess I didn't unmute. So celebrate the civic nature of the project with public art and iconic architectural elements. I think, if there could be maybe a way to introduce something artistic about that pedestrian plaza or some other way to kind of make sort of something artistic related to the project.
Thank you. So we have, I'm going to give us a few minutes here. For number 5, this was kind of a parking lot in case there were any, really seminal ideas, any big kind of picture items that people wanted to put forward, for consideration that didn't really fit within the framework of the first 4 questions. So we'll take, we have 2 or 3 minutes. We can kind of add anything that folks would like captured here to share, knowing that we still do have 2 more meetings, but if there's any kind of thing that's really resonating strongly that you'd like to put forward, we can take a few minutes and do that. And then we're going to use our final 8 minutes or so to review kind of our responses and see if there's anything else we want to add or build on to for the first 4 questions. So I'll turn it back. Terry, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Terry, I think.
I have some concern about where the location of the parking is in relationship to the main building. Also, in relationship to the main entrance. It's not particularly conducive to where people are getting off the buses or where they're coming from the parking structure. I understand having it on Columbia Pike where it can be the equivalent of public art. It can be a very beautiful entrance, but it has to be able to be a place that people can walk to and get to safely from the buses and the parking structure.
Thank you. Rosa?
I agree with Terry in the sense that I think the pedestrian access on the site should be studied a little bit more. So for instance, if people choose to use the stair that is on the northwest side of the garage, and so basically they're coming down on Highland and they want to get to the entrance, they're going to cut across the grass there. And so you're going to get those unintentional paths, you know, perhaps, and then, so why not plan for them? And then my other comment was related to the field. It just feels like it's shoved up against Highland, and you do have a nice grassy, tree-lined buffer between the building and the one road there, or, you know, the internal site loop. But I don't know, it just seems like it pushes the field, you know, away from the building, maybe.
And Jonathan, just being mindful of time, I think we'll be regrouping at 8:30. So we also need to think about what to highlight to the rest of the group. Yes.
Yeah, we'll do one more minute of this and then we'll go back through. All right, so we have time. Thanks, Robert, for the reminder, though. Let's say we have time for 2 more comments for number 5, and then we'll work on our recap. Let me, Sergio or Michelle, anything, or Heather, anything to add before I come back on the loop to others who have already spoke? Okay. Terry, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that in the recap last time, I want to make sure that the other groups have a very different point of view on any particular item that we have a point of view on, that you would bring that up, even if it's not one of the things we highlighted. Last time, the other 2 groups both said they wanted it not to be so tall, and they were concerned about height. And our group every one of us thought we'd rather have it high and have more green space. So I think when you listen to the other comments, it's important that you highlight how we differentiate from them.
No, that is a great point. And I think there is a summary posted online as well to kind of highlight those areas of, you know, where ideas were, you know, divergent or kind of in line with one another. But no, that is a good point. And we'll be sure. Robert, do you want to start from the top and we'll kind of just go through? We can, we'll highlight our big ideas to share out and then also give people a chance to review what's written and see if there's any additional things we want to supplement or make sure that we've captured your feedback accurately. So let's give everyone a minute to review the bullets that are listed, and then just raise your hand if there's any clarification or additional points. Terry, go ahead.
I believe our main concern here was with pedestrians and buses sharing the same plaza.
Yeah. The whole interplay between all of the you know, everything, the bikers, the walkers, pedestrians, buses, how that all converges together in that loop and plaza.
Yeah, I think the key being the logistics. It's not, I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I think you just have to understand how it's going to really happen. You know, so.
Great. Michelle?
Yeah, and I was going to say the other thing was that we just weren't really sure that it was clear how it was supposed to be used, even as a plaza.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love the idea, and I know that there's projects that we're doing in DC that have these beautiful, like, pedestrian passageways that then occasionally are used for loading or something. But that's again, there's a reason to kind of like just wander around. I don't, and sit, and there's a cafe there, and there's this, that, no one's gonna just kind of go strolling in this plaza next to the existing career center and an empty building. I mean,
Okay, let's go to the next section.
So I'll highlight this one.
Mhm.
So, okay.
I think some of the use too, just as a quick anecdote, it would be also the proximity to where the cafeteria is in the building. I think the plaza and the green spaces used in that plaza will kind of hinge on that as well, at least during the school day, of whether students go out there. Number 2, on-site parking. I'll give everyone a minute to kind of read through those bullets. See if there's anything to. Michelle?
I think that I can't read it, but I think that the big takeaway was that we wanted the green space. We would sacrifice the higher parking garage for more green space.
I just wanted to say I agree completely.
I agree too. So it seems like that should be something we say, even if it's a repeat of what everybody else says.
So just so it's sacrifice. I'm sorry if you could paraphrase.
Maximize height of parking garage to maximize green space.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. All right, next, let's go to part B, see if there's any real salient points we want to highlight there. I think that's self-explanatory, prioritizing staff. I'd be shocked if anyone says anything different than that. That we need to prioritize staff above all else. And then maybe the point, I think maybe about the spots for parents, the short term, that's maybe a point that we want to emphasize in addition to prioritizing staff, that that ground level, there's some short-term availability for families to. Number 3, what aspects of the building and site concepts offer the most appeal?
I think the terraces was the big,
Yeah.
Everybody, I think, like the terraces and the natural green looking terraces, the plantings.
Yeah. Strong support for the terraces. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I heard what Terry said about us all saying that we wanted green space in the height, but last time our group, some people had really high heights that they were talking about. I mean, floor 7 and floor 8 even came up in the discussion, which we did not agree that was a good idea. And so I think that the positive here is the height, that we have, 3 floors and 4 floors moving up to 5 floors, that the height is a little bit, and people can disagree, but I think the height is good. I agree with that too.
Yeah, in the last meeting, Heather had some great points about students and just, being in staff, being able to navigate the building between classes and transitions. When you're up at 7 floors, that's becomes more challenging.
They do it in many urban places.
The heights of the on the new massing.
Yeah. Okay, and our last one, and we're just going to have time for one last one here. Number 4. Let's go to number 4, Robert. I think we covered the terraces. The alignment with the civic design piece. I think the point of emphasis there, accessibility and location of the terraces, I think what was the big piece here. Do people agree? Accessibility and location?
Yes.
Yeah, I think trying to make at least a portion of a terrace publicly accessible, and therefore obviously you'll have to do that. You'd have to keep it accessible from the, from the sidewalk, you know, without stairs.
Yeah.
But I think the other, yes, okay, that's it.
Perfect.
I
All right,
also the comment about art.
yes, thank you.
And can I throw one more thing in with number 2?
Yep.
The parking. Terry brought up, and I think that more thought has to go into the automotive program, where cars are going to go and how they're going to get in.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to get pushed back. Have a great
Yeah,
rest of the evening.
And I think the way